in the different geopolitical zones of the country. The House of Representatives hosted its long-awaited summit on security. President Buhari summoned an extraordinary summit of heads of state and government of Lake Chad Basin Commission, and the recent declaration of the southern governors to ban open grazing, amongst a host of other demands to the president, continues to cause quite a stir in different quarters. Now, while all of this was happening, killings resurfaced on the plateau and seemed to get worse in Benue. Are the meetings listed above genuinely going to help find a way forward? On Hard Copy tonight, I speak with Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi, the Executive Director of the Center for Peace Building and Socioeconomic Resources Development. He's also a security and defense expert. Dr. Fagbemi, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you very much. I always prefer to be called a student.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to be a student to be a doctor now, don't you? Well, a lot of issues to consider in our body politic. Let's start with the Constitution Amendment. The hearings started this week. Now, some say this could actually, provide us a solution. Some say no. What we need is a brand new constitution. As the hearings happen this week, starts this week with public hearings, what's your take on the matter?
It's a welcome development that we're having the public hearings now. And I want to believe that the National Assembly, the Ninth Assembly, by now would have done a lot of due diligence with the memoranda received towards the end of last year, because the Senate did call for the memoranda to be submitted by various stakeholders, and they did that September of 2020. What actually transpired this week is an opportunity for the Senate wing of the Constitution Review Committee to understand the feelings of Nigerians, to receive, as it were, the pulse of the nation, to understand the mood. And if you take a look at the way some of the comments and submissions at the various centers, 12 of them actually across the country, the presentations made it very clear that there are three different schools of thoughts. Number one, completely jettison the existing legal framework called the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's what some people believe, and let us have a brand new constitution. The second school of thought says it is easier for us to reverse to the 1963 Constitution, which was a last known, properly negotiated and interactive participatory democracy constitution that was produced for the Nigerian state, as it were. Or the National Assembly, the Ninth Assembly, will exhibit a lot of political resourcefulness and will be bold and exercise the political will to do a very decisive surgery on this 1999 Constitution in such a manner that it will have allayed the fears of the two different schools of thought, would have attended to the exigencies of a brand new constitution, and or absorbing all the ideas contained in the 1963 Constitution. My take is that within the context of understanding what is called informed political self-preservation of the political class, I am hoping that this Ninth Assembly will take advantage of the close relationship that they have with the executive branch, that they will preserve the Nigerian state in such a manner that will help us to survive all these schisms and grandstanding of the agitations, will help us to understand that if we do not manage this properly within the confines of this opportunity that we have, we may not have a Nigerian state.
How likely is that, though? How likely is that the third option will be what will happen, considering just how strongly those in the first and second class hold on to their thoughts, and how sometimes they think that what really needs to be done cannot be done by the National Assembly?
Interestingly, one thing I've come to realize as a student of preventive peace building is that when you take a look at what we normally call the progression curve for peace building, conflict, and de-escalation of challenges, you'll discover that at times people express strong positions because before now, there has been no meaningful dialogue. Can we introduce the fact that we need to start having referendum when we want to tinker with any component of the Constitution? If you bring the referendum clause into it, that is a sign of goodwill and confidence building, mindful of the fact that it will help others to understand that, wait a minute, if we subject it to a referendum, anytime we will know that it will be properly discussed openly and the citizens can participate.
How hopeful, sorry to interrupt you, but how hopeful are you that that can happen? Especially when we know that this is not the first constitution amendment that we've had. I mean, there have been attempts at constitution amendments, and it would seem that at almost every assembly we have, it is just a matter of what needs to be done. It's just part of the agenda.
We've never had it this bad in Nigeria. The level of insecurity, the level of in the real sense of scientific discourse, Nigeria is actually a failed state. But all of us will want to say we are only failing, mindful of the fact that there is a little ray of hope at the end of the tunnel. Nigeria remains a state, a Nigerian state, a country, and not a nation. So if we really must build a nation and emerge as a coherent, integrated set of people, wherein there are equal opportunities, where you have social justice, then we must not allow this opportunity to slip by us.
It is quite worrisome, the security situation. Do you genuinely think that the meetings which we're currently hosting in different parts of the country and also even here in the Federal Capital Territory will provide solutions to stop this sort of killings? Because at the end of the day, that's what the ordinary people care about.
The discussions at most of those gatherings are always very sincere, painfully. It is how to translate the decisions and the ideas into reality. And to solve the Nigerian security crisis is very simple and straightforward. I say simple and straightforward. One, a killing has occurred. What is a legal proviso or provisos that are applicable to when you kill somebody? You go to the criminal and penal codes and you use it and apply it to determine how to proceed with the investigation. It is called homicidal investigation. If along the line you discovered that there's some motivation and you do a thorough investigation and do not sweep it under the carpet, and this is where some of us are very straightforward in presenting to everyone who cares to know, there is nothing like farmers-herders conflict or clash in Nigeria. What you are having is very simple and straightforward. You're having criminal trespass, criminal encroachment, and in cases where abuses do occur, if the abuse was against the female and it was sexual in nature, you're talking of rape. If a property was destroyed, then you're talking of arson. These are the criminal acts that can be investigated, prosecuted, and sanctions meted out under our law.
Let me quickly take you up on the point of peace building, which you've talked about, and investigating criminality, which is how you qualify what has been generally termed farmer-herders clashes. I think we're speaking with somebody on another sister program, and the member of the House of Rep was talking about how we have what he calls political peace, and that's why we will keep seeing this sort of killings over and over again. In your opinion, why is it difficult to have the element of justice built into this?
It is difficult primarily because all of us are wearing masks in the Nigerian state. And when people are wearing masks,
Not COVID-19 masks.
not COVID-19 masks, a number of these individuals that are in public glare belong to things that demand that they allow some few things to happen. For those of us who have taken the pains of doing a thorough study, we have discovered that there has been some convergence and correlation with human sacrifice within the Nigerian state.
Human sacrifice. What does that mean?
Killing people and taking human blood to appease some gods. It is very unfortunate that such things, people will not want to discuss it. But for some of us, we have come to the level that we need to begin to bring this to the fore. We have what is called the coroner's law. When the killings are perpetrated by criminal actors, what usually happens, you end up having a situation where you have mass funeral, mass burial done on those, and no coroner's inquest was done on those bodies to determine if actually this and this happened to those bodies.
You're suspecting. I mean, this is another dimension I have never heard of.
This is another dimension that all of us would rather veer off from. And that is why you'll discover that the speed at which they want the mass burial done, it's impossible for you to do thorough coroner inquest until the law enforcement system and the political class agree and are willing for us to do thorough investigation and have a closure so that we can have lessons learned and drawn from such experiences. Another thing that you will begin to draw when we are following the books truly, 2006, a Dornier 228 crashed en route to Obudu. On board that aircraft, we had 8 major generals, 2 brigadiers generals, and a lieutenant colonel and some others to make the 12 senior officers on board. I'm aware that part of the decision was that we needed to change our travel and logistics protocol. How many generals and high-profile officers of the Nigerian security defense establishment can be allowed to travel in the same equipment? And so when last week Friday, exactly 1 week today, we now suddenly lost another equipment, a Beechcraft equipment. How come the protocol of travels allowed for those officers and men to be in the same equipment? How come within the space of hours after the incident, the Defense Information Management System declared that it was due to weather, and the manager in charge, the Civil Aviation Authority in charge of the Kaduna International Airport, said, and you have it in your kitty as channels, she said she was made to understand that it was because there was a weather challenge that instead of the equipment landing at the military airstrip, that they asked the equipment to divert to the civil aviation airstrip. Now, no accident investigation bureau inquests had been done. How come we are not willing to really address the issues the way they ought to have been addressed?
Well, let's take you up on this issue of the ban on open grazing by southern governors, amongst a host of other issues which they brought up in their meeting in Asaba. That has continued to generate reactions. We saw the current Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Malami, SAN, come out in public to, say amongst a host of other things about how he thinks the governors are grandstanding. And he made the example of how, what it would be like if, governors of the North should also ban trade in spare parts. Why do you think that this has generated the sort of reactions that it has generated in recent times?
I was part of a study Q3 of 2015 to Q2 2016. It was titled The Nomadic Herdsmen Related Security Challenges. One of the findings said there was an attempt by some groups of individuals to embed population for political capital. Some subsets of the findings said it was clear that some of these individuals are non-Nigerians, and by embedding them, they will be given citizenship by default, one way or the other. Then it sounded very abstract, very weird. But today, if we were to revalidate the findings of that study, we will discover that we were spot on. The moment we do not allow ourselves to take advantage of early warnings that we do have, and we do not allow the legal and policy frameworks of the Nigerian state to be properly interpreted and enforced. It is unfortunate that Citizen Malami is a senior advocate of Nigeria and will interpret the provision that says free movement the way he made it. And this is where some of us are still arguing that they need to separate the offices of Attorney General from that of Minister of Justice. I want to believe that Citizen Malami was speaking as Minister of Justice, and so he could make some political comments. But as Attorney General, within the confines of the legal and policy frameworks of the Nigerian state, he has no business speaking to the public.
What will boggle the minds of many is the fact that he made this comment. I mean, and of course, there's been some reaction as well in a few quarters to the meeting of the Southern governors. Some say, oh, it's a hidden attempt, or it's a veiled attempt at secession. I mean, there have been those kinds of reactions as well. But in your mind, why do you think that, the Northern governors also held a meeting, putting a ban on open grazing, but it didn't quite generate this much reaction?
That's why I said it's very unfortunate that when issues are not addressed early enough, they start crystallizing and you start forming sides. When the Northern governors held their own meeting and they took far-reaching decisions, it was okay. And mind you, you need to ask again the question, how come you are now advocating for Ruga, you are doing a national livestock transformation plan, whereas all you need to do is to go back and ask simple questions. What has befallen the grazing reserves that hitherto existed? What has been the contribution and the success story associated with the nomadic education protocol and program, for which we have spent billions? For example, when you take a look at it and understand that the nomadic education was introduced in 89, thereabout, how many years are you dealing with? You're already dealing with about 32 years. If you're dealing with about 32 years, you need to ask the question, how many people have they processed and graduated? If the Nomadic Education Commission had been a success story, we should have university graduates with postgraduate qualification as being products. And they would have understood that you do not need to continue to graze and transit your cattle the way we are doing in the Nigerian state, for effectiveness, for efficiency, for proper economies of scale.
So you see these meetings as people haven't taken sides.
Yes.
The presidency, in the statement which was issued by Garba Shehu, was correct on that point.
Interestingly, Citizen Garba Shehu may have been speaking for himself.
Why do you say so?
One of the few things I'll plead with those of you in the media to start doing is demand that if there's any press statement issued, you do not receive it from their Twitter feed. You must receive it in the proper way that they're expected to issue presidential statement.
However, all of this has a reason because of the president's style, and we've been told by his aides, is a style of communication with the Nigerian people. How have you been able to, how do you think that we all have acclimatized to this style of communication with the Nigerian people?
It's a sad commentary for a country populated with over 200 tertiary institutions, where you have over 6,000 called to bar annually, for us to be going through what we are going through. It's a sad commentary that we have a political class that is participating in what is supposed to be a participatory democracy, where you have the principles of checks and balances in place. It's a sad commentary that you have the legislative branch empowered to do some few things that will ensure that the executive branch is held accountable. It's a sad commentary that the judiciary is no longer as independent as it ought to be. It's a sad commentary. And I'm only hoping that those who are inside the State House complex with the incumbent will wake up and know that history, whether we are no longer learning it in school as part of the curriculum or otherwise, will judge them.
As we wrap up now, and this is very quickly, there are plans by the House of Representatives to scrap the National Youth Service Program. As someone who is a peace builder, and this was one of the programs brought up after the war, the Civil War, to try and foster national integration, do you think that they have a point in trying to scrap the program?
NYSC is a viable program. If you ask me, I will still want to use it. And I will even say maybe convert it to a 2-year program and ensure that for about 5-6 years, all NYSC mobilized will be serving with security and law enforcement, to wit particularly the police and the civil defense, so that we can have them properly trained and we can allow them to help cover a major gap that we are having. The capacity of the Nigerian police and civil defense to do serious analysis and mapping is a bit weak.
Are you still optimistic about the Nigerian state?
I always want to go personal. I live here in Abuja. I'm married to somebody from the southeastern part of the country. The only place I have me and my